Hey, it's Matt LaRosia with Firearms Policy Coalition bringing you another weekly update, just to make sure you guys have all of the latest information on everything affecting your right to keep and bear arms. Now, excuse me if there's some noise in the background today. I'm printing out something which will be of relevance to one of our stories. And also, I've noticed that some of you guys in the comments have been asking where I get these shirts from. They're actually from fpcgear.com. So if you like them and you want to check out some of our other designs, I encourage you guys to check it out. But without further ado, let's get stuck in. Let's talk a little bit about interstate travel with firearms. A lot of you who have done this know that it can be pretty stressful, especially if you live abutting a less free state. So for a long time on the books, we've had the Firearm Owners Protection Act, which is not very popular among our community, mostly because of the Hughes Amendment, which basically drove the cost of machine guns absolutely ridiculously through the roof. The other parts of FOPA are basically protecting, it's intended to protect you when you're traveling through states that have more strict gun laws. However, the law is completely toothless. Like, your firearm basically has to be completely non-functional, locked away in a separate cabin. So if you have a pickup truck, oh well, sorry. And there's all kinds of things that are not included in travel, that have been subject to a lot of debate. Like, you know, are you still traveling if you stop for the night? What if you stop at a restaurant? It's a big mess, and it definitely wasn't worth the Hughes Amendment. But Senator Steve Daines of Montana introduced the Lawful Interstate Transportation of Firearms Act, these are also wonderfully named, to try to address some of these problems. So what this law does, or aims to do, is redefine the term transport to include those types of activities that you usually associate with transportation, you know, like staying at a hotel, stopping for gas, getting your vehicle serviced, or medical treatment in the event of an emergency. Just things to, I guess, give one little snaggletooth to FOPA for, you know, those of us who have to travel interstate and don't want to be completely disarmed when we get to our destination. You know, it's a good effort. It's well intended. That said, FOPA is a mess. You know, I don't know how we're going to solve the problem of interstate transportation through little amendments like this, right? We have a constitutional right to free travel across state borders, and we also have a fundamental individual right to keep and bear arms. So there ought to be some strong recognition that if I'm going from one state where carrying this firearm is legal to another state where carrying this firearm is legal, should be good to go. Not exactly sure what that would look like. Maybe some kind of, you know, protection, specific protections from searching interstate traveling vehicles, stuff like that. I'm not exactly sure. You know, it's a nice gesture, but not perfect. All right, now, hold on to your chair because this is going to shock you. We got to talk about Virginia Governor Northam. So he signed an emergency action to ban weapons on the state capitol amidst fear of some retaliation or whatever that might go on at the rally that's coming up on Monday. That said, the officials within Northam's cabinet admitted that this action isn't based on any specific threats of violence or any actual credible plans, but rather the governor's own growing concern about ominous messages online and on social media. It's definitely a supremely valid exercise of state of emergency and gubernatorial power. Way to go. No, it's not just firearms that are banned, but things like chains and sticks, you know, the usual instruments of rebellion. Now, you know, all that said, there's a lot going on in Virginia, but it's really important that all of our people stay safe. So if you're going out there, just keep your head on your shoulders straight, all right? Seriously. Next up, guys, Michigan may no longer be banning stun guns. The state is catching up with the rest of the country and with the state of the law, finally advancing legislation that permits anybody over the age of 18 to possess a stun gun in the state. Before 2012, stun guns were outright banned in Michigan, and between then and now, they were available, you could possess them only if you had a concealed pistol license. Of course, stun guns were held to be protected by the Second Amendment in Caetano versus Massachusetts, and so definitely banning them and heavily restricting them is assuredly unconstitutional. All right, next up on the federal level, boo, ghost guns. we've been discussing for quite some time, there's been a lot of litigation around 3D printable files and designs and whatnot being posted online. The Department of State was the one regulating firearm blueprints, supposedly under ITAR, a obscure Cold War era like traffic and arms regulation series. It's really complicated to get into, but we've discussed it a lot before, so if you're interested, you can check that stuff out on our website. That said, after all of this litigation with Defense Distributed about whether or not the government can, regulate who can post these files online, Department of State decided to transfer authority on these files over to the Department of Commerce. And it looked for a while like Commerce was going to, be rational and say, we don't want to regulate these files and there's no point because they're widely available on the internet anyway. But now there's been some reeling back, and it seems that the BIS has responded to pressure from gun control groups to continue regulating these types of files online. It's unsure, and everything's in flux with administrative rulemaking, right? Anything could change at any moment. But right now it's kind of murky. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this. Because, and the government talks about this a lot in their findings for the new rulemaking. What would happen if people could just, 3D print guns, right? Oof. As for putting files elsewhere, not online, the government admits here that it has no jurisdiction over that. At least they seem to in this rulemaking report. They say that, transfers of these printable files between people within the United States is completely outside of their department. As for how to do this without going online, they recommend the US mail. I've said it before, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. Any kind of design is First Amendment protected speech. I don't care if you write it in a notebook. I don't care if it's uploaded to the cloud. If it's your design, it's expression. The same way you writing a computer program is, designing a beautiful Tech 9 receiver is just as well. And now, in my beautiful, sunny home country of Florida, the most gun-shaped state in the union, I might add, our glorious and learned state Senate is pushing Senate Bill 7028, which is aimed at closing the gun show loophole. Now, according to our Senate, the fact that two law-abiding Floridians would be able to voluntarily engage in a transaction and sell to one another an item is a horrible thing and needs to be addressed. It needs to be closed, this loophole. What this does is it sets up a record-keeping requirement for private gun sales. It also sets up kind of like a weird, state-backed, almost like a quasi-4473, which, yeah, that's what we need, more paperwork. Super green, guys. And it sets up a $5 million violence prevention strategy system, which I'm sure will produce some mascot or something. Well, let's just hope that our learned senators figure out that this is dumb. And for a quick litigation update, there is a challenge to the city of Philadelphia's requirement that any lost or stolen firearms be reported to the city. This is based on Pennsylvania's complete preemption of local firearms laws. Well, that's all for this week. It's been great having you guys here. As always, keep your eyes on firearmspolicy.org for all of the latest on everything affecting your right to keep and bear arms, where we are keeping up the fight for all of your rights all the time. Until next time, I've been Matt LaRosiere, and I'll see you real soon.